Hi everybody, welcome to Watch It or Don't. I'm Tom with Matt and Dan, and today we're reviewing Macbeth, Justin Kurzel's new Shakespeare adaptation starring Michael Fassbender and Marion Cotillard. And it is Macbeth. It is the story of a Scottish thane who has some lofty goals as far as kingship goes.
Yep. It's not really a spoiler.
Right.
He murders the King of Scotland and assumes the throne. And
yeah, if you don't know Macbeth by now, it's really not on us.
Right. And I would say, if you're going to see this movie, I think you should know Macbeth.
Yeah.
If you don't know the story going in, it might be tough to follow.
Especially with like the language and the accent on top of that. I'm sure there were people at points where they were just like, nope.
Yeah.
I didn't catch every line for sure.
Right.
But I actually just read this. I mean, I finished it maybe a few hours before we went to see the movie. And I think that actually was a really positive thing for me because they cut a lot of the lines from this movie. It's actually pretty minimal when it comes to the actual lines.
Yeah, it's only about an hour, 45 minutes or so, which is short for a Shakespeare play.
Right. Since I knew a lot of the context, I remembered it just from it being so fresh.
Yeah.
I was able to fill in a lot of gaps, and that helped a lot.
Well, I'm kind of the reverse of that. I mean, it's probably my favorite Shakespeare story, and I did read it a long time ago, and I've seen many interpretations, like plays that were filmed, obviously, in different adaptations, if you will. So to not hear some classic lines that the witches say, like, double, double, toil and trouble, all that, or something wicked this way comes, which is like the most iconic witch line of all time. It was weird. If you are a huge fan of Macbeth, maybe not so much. But if you like Macbeth,
but given the tone of the movie, the tone is very. I don't know what to call it. It's a very strange kind of.
It's almost minimalist.
Yeah, right.
There's not a lot of talking. It's very visual. Is the key
extremely
form here, and they do cut a lot of lines. And I think if you are in love with the play, you're not going to like this movie as much. Me personally, I enjoy Macbeth. It's not my favorite Shakespeare play, and I don't read it all the time. It's just kind of like, oh, I know the story, whatever. I think this worked for me a lot better than other adaptations. If they had just filmed this very straight, I would have been like, okay, that's another Macbeth adaptation. We've had a dozen of those. This at least tries to do something different with it, and tries to show the characters just in a little bit different light that we haven't seen exactly before.
This was really pretty. It was a gorgeous film. I love the costumes. I think that was one of the best things in the film. So I wanted it to be just this perfect adaptation of Macbeth because it had all the right pieces.
If I say that, if you want to see that, go see it on the stage. This is a visual medium.
Well, it'd be like seeing Romeo and Juliet and then them not having the window scene because it's we're minimalist.
I deal with it. I don't know. I think that your comparison there is a little unfair because while the witch scene is iconic, it's one of the few things I was actually really familiar with before reading it. You know?
Everyone knows pop culture.
Right. But again, it wouldn't have fit in well with this movie.
Well, it was just one small part. I mean, there's huge parts. Probably the biggest change, other than the witches, would be just how his wife behaves, because she is very controlling, and here she's very timid. And Michael Fassbender even is aggressive with her, which in the play, I should say, she is very controlling of him. Yeah, and she was kind of weak here, and that was kind of weird to see.
It's not my favorite Lady Macbeth portrayal, but I thought Marion Cotillard did It's a reasonable job. It's more subtle than other performances. I'd rather have her do that subtle character turn rather than be way over the top, because in this, way over the top wouldn't work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of the movie's kind of faults is that the progression from them, at the beginning when they're planning on the murder, and then once, they are king and queen, the progression of kind of the madness of each is pretty sudden, and it's not as gradual and well built as I would have liked.
Agree with that. But let's talk about that visual style first, because I think that is the reason to see this movie.
Absolutely.
Who is the cinematographer?
I think the name is Adam Arkapaw. I
think you're right.
And he was the cinematographer for the first season of True Detective.
Yes.
Which is absolutely amazing work.
This movie opens with a big battle scene, which I think is beautifely shot.
Yep.
It's intense.
Probably my favorite scene.
It combines a lot of slow motion, a lot of different color palettes.
Yeah.
It's violent, gritty. And there's other parts of this movie just with really cool color. Every shot you could pause and you could make that
That's the thing.
a frame.
I would buy a book of stills just from this movie.
This is such an interesting movie.
I mean, the play focuses so heavily on both madness and the supernatural, and there's a lot of really weird editing, a lot of things out of sequence. And for me, that was a sign of the supernatural, interference, the madness, and in extension, that the end sequence was also kind of like that, where it's this extreme like dreamlike quality.
And I'm glad that they did that because the movie is a visual medium.
Yeah.
You have more freedom to do that kind of thing rather than if you just shot straight like a BBC production.
Yeah.
That's just the play.
Right. Which
this
has its merit.
Yeah, it totally does. I think you should see Macbeth in the theater for sure. But I think you should see Macbeth in the movie theater as well. I think it's an interesting enough adaptation.
I feel like they will never. I mean, in school it was a big deal. We watched 2 versions of the movie just to help you get through the book. Because you'll never watch this one in school. Not because it's violent, because it doesn't really follow the book.
But I think this also doesn't serve that purpose. It wasn't made for that purpose.
No.
It's not like watching.
It's just weird that it's called Macbeth and it's not really Macbeth.
But
it is, but it isn't. It is, but it isn't. I mean, it's missing some of the key bits.
I don't think it matters. Unless you're really tied to the play, it does not matter.
It's
I
weird
don't think that it should ruin the experience of watching this.
It's weird that the people that like Macbeth that would actually go see it in a theater are expecting Macbeth, and when they'll get there, they're going to be disappointed. That's what I think, because I don't think people that don't know the story are going to go and hear those accents and get lost.
They might not, but if you're into an interesting visual story,
it's visually stimulating.
And if you just have a mildly interest in Macbeth, I think go see it.
I mean, again, having just read it, and let me say, I loved it. Absolutely loved reading it. And I mean, I'm not a Shakespeare expert, but I've read a decent amount of Shakespeare, and I absolutely loved reading Macbeth, and I didn't feel cheated from this movie. And that's something that is actually a pretty common thing with Shakespeare adaptations, is feeling a little cheated. And I was pleased with this movie.
All right, let's jump into ratings.
Sure.
I think we've kind of made our points here.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm going to go first. I'm giving it an 8.1 out of 10. I think it's a really very interesting film just to look at. I could have watched this without the sound and still given it a high 7. But I think see Macbeth if you have any interest in the play, in Shakespeare, or just any kind of interesting cinematography. I'd say see Macbeth.
I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 stars. It let me down. I went in expecting Macbeth, and it's pretty. I like the visuals. It's just things were changed, so I was a little let down. If you're a huge fan of the text and of the play, I think you're going to be a little disappointed.
I'm going to give this movie a great, and I think it's, like what Matt said, it's a little unfair to go into a movie expecting a completely faithful adaptation, and that's true of anything. Right. Anything that gets turned into a movie is going to be different. And so, if I had wanted to do the minimalist, like, on-a-stage play of Macbeth, I would have seen that. But, I mean, the movie to me was such a visceral, beautifully shot thing, and it was enough to make me care, but it wasn't too much to seem overly produced. I do think it could have used more. I think they, again, should have committed to more of the dialogue, more of a runtime, and I do think it would have benefited. But overall, I really enjoyed the movie.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I agree. Anyway, we're maybe a little split on this one, but we gotta go. We're Watch or Don't. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.